So who was William Wilberforce? Wilberforce was born in 1759 and he lived to the age of 73. He's known generally for being a British politician, the leader of the movement to abolish the slave trade, and a philanthropist. Let me try and briefly sum up his life. Well, he was born the only son of a wealthy merchant family in Kingston upon Hull in Yorkshire. As a child, he was small, often unwell, he had poor eyesight, and in fact would have bouts of illness throughout his life. When he was 9, his father died, and because his mum couldn't cope, he was sent down to London to live with an aunt and uncle. He lived there for 3 years and then came back afterwards to live back in Hull. His mother and grandfather didn't like the fact that his aunt and uncle were evangelical Methodist Christians. Anyway, he lived with them until the age of 17, when Wilberforce went to go to Cambridge University, where a year later, due to the deaths of his grandfather and his uncle, he became independently wealthy, and as a result he had little inclination to study and instead spent an awful lot of time doing a lot of stuff. He did, though, pass his exams and made friends, which included the future Prime Minister William Pitt, and possibly through his influence he started on a political career. And while still at Cambridge University at the age of 21, he became MP for Kingston upon Hull, serving as an independent. Well, some 5 years later, in 1785, the life of Wilberforce would change. No particular event is referred to, but he became a Christian. He started to rise early and to read the Bible and to pray. His lifestyle changed, and he became what he described as a converted evangelical Christian, and he now questioned as to whether a Christian could remain in Parliament. Well, somebody called John Newton, who you'll know from writing Amazing Grace, and others persuaded him, yes, continue to be a politician. And he resolved then to, quote, to do that with increased diligence and conscientiousness. His political views thereafter were informed by his faith and his desire to promote Christianity and Christian ethics in private and public life. And it was 2 years afterwards that he came into contact with Thomas Clarkson and a group of anti-slave trade activists, and they persuaded him to take up the cause of abolition within Parliament, and he became soon one of the leading English abolitionists. Wilberforce's involvement in the abolition movement was motivated by a desire to put his Christian principles into action and to serve God in public life. Wilberforce sensed a call from God, and writing in his journal at the time, said that God Almighty has set before me two great objects: the suppression of the slave trade and the reformation of moral values. Well, Wilberforce would head the parliamentary campaign against the British slave trade for 20 years, introducing bill after bill after bill and getting defeated, until finally he was successful in the passage of the Slave Trade Act of 1807, which meant that slaves could no longer be carried in British ships. Wilberforce continued to campaign for the complete abolition of slavery, and 3 days before his death in 1833, some 26 years later, he heard that the bill for the abolition of slavery would be passed by Parliament. We all know about his involvement in the abolition of the slave trade, which was made into the film Amazing Grace, released in 2007, which starred Benedict Cumberbatch. But that's not all he was involved in. Wilberforce was convinced of the importance of religion, morality and education. He championed causes and campaigns such as the Society for the Suppression of Vice, British missionary work in India, the creation of a free colony in Sierra Leone, the foundation of the Church Mission Society, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and what also would become the RNLI. Quite a range of interests. Not only that, but Wilberforce advocated legislation to improve the working conditions for chimney sweeps and textile workers. He engaged in prison reform, supported campaigns to restrict capital punishment and the severe punishments meted under the game laws for poaching. He recognised the importance of education in relieving poverty, and when Hannah More and her sister established Sunday schools for the poor in Somerset and the Mendips, he provided financial and moral support as they faced opposition from landowners and Anglican clergy. Well, Wilberforce was generous with his time and his money, believing that those with wealth had a duty to give a significant proportion of their income to the needy. Yearly he gave away thousands of pounds, much of it to clergymen to distribute to their parishes. He paid off the debts of others, supported education and missions, and in a year of food shortages gave to charity more than his own yearly income. Wilberforce also wrote a Christian book when he was 38, which was an exposition of the New Testament doctrine and teachings and a call for a revival of Christianity as a response to the moral decline of the nation, illustrating his own personal testimony and the views which inspired him. The book turned out to be influential and a bestseller by the standards of his day. In his personal life, he was late to marry, but did so in his late 30s after a whirlwind romance. He met his future wife Barbara in April, and he was married by the end of May. They had 5 children in less than 10 years. We've heard of the statues being removed from churches recently because of their connection with slavery. Well, nobody, I don't think, would wish to remove the statue which exists in Westminster Abbey commemorating William Wilberforce. What can we learn from the life of Wilberforce? Amongst other things we can say, don't give up what you believe God has called you to do. This applied to getting slavery finally abolished over so many years, but also to the so many other good causes that Wilberforce was engaged in. Secondly, do your best. Do the best you can for God, whatever He's called you to be. Parliament was where Wilberforce was able to bring change, but it was not initially where he thought a Christian should be. And if you have wealth, then use it for good. I would encourage you to read more about William Wilberforce, maybe a good biography such as that by John Pollock. Let his life inspire you.